We're going to take a look at the West Coast Eagles drafter profile this week and just how they approach it. Is it best available? Do they look at specific needs? Do they recruit locally and try to keep a group together? But how do the West Coast Eagles, coming off what will be statistically the worst season in their club's history, how do they start the long road back?
We'll start with West Coast. Darren, like you talked about with Cooper Duff-Tytler, one of the question marks that surrounds them is whether to go tall early in the draft. But also, is it a case of taking best available talent? It probably is.
I think that's probably West Coast's approach is best available, but there are other layers to that. I mean, we know it's been a historically low point season-wise in terms of the fact that, a one-win campaign outside of the expansion clubs, GWS, and at the time of recording, they've still got a game to play, but outside of GWS in their second season, you got to go back to Fitzroy in their last year to have a side with a one-win campaign. We know that what's happened to them over the last few years in terms of they win a flag in 2018. They were around the mark for the next couple of years. They sold the farm to sort of stay in contention. It didn't quite work. They lost a lot of draft capital. But if you look at purely their list, so Barras is gone, McGovern's forced to retire, Oscar Allen obviously headed out the door as what was a very bright key position prospect for them. What happens with Harley Reid? The question around whether he gets poached by a Geelong or a Hawthorn, that they clearly would get an enormous draft windfall if that did happen, given his value. And then where does it leave them? I think it's very clear now. Obviously, they misread where they were at with the Kelly scenario. They know that answer now. But I think for West Coast, it's about just casting the net and boosting really every aspect of the game. And they've got access to, as you say, the best ruck prospect in the draft, and probably the best ruck prospect in the draft for a little while. Do they go down that path, or do they look at strengthening their midfield, going for key position players at either end of the ground? But I think for West Coast, it's less specific and more quality. But I'd pose the question to you in regards to when Brisbane had a long period in the doldrums. The biggest issue they had was player retention. Now, there's not going to be a lot of Queenslanders necessarily in the draft for Brisbane, so they had to think a bit laterally. And they would often recruit, they'd have a top-end talent from a particular club, and then they might recruit somebody who was, a very good mate of theirs from the same club who they've got a bit of an eye on to get that familiarity and that sort of sense of safety and avoiding the homesickness and that type of thing. So I wonder whether West Coast don't just channel towards WA, but channel towards that type of thing. Start building some connections and make sure that whatever they recruit stays long-term, that they can build around.
Yeah, well, it's a very, very good point. I think it's been talked about a little bit tongue-in-cheek with, getting Willem Dersma and hoping that keeps Harley Reid there, but actually looking at that as more of a potential strategy. But also, it's probably worth touching on the fact that they've got Kobe Evans and Wes Wally in their next generation academy. So Kobe Evans is a midfielder and Wes Wally is a small forward. So that strengthens up parts of the ground. But I think it's a sound point that you make, because actually working on a story about Ruben Jimby at the moment, and it's interesting that when he debuted, he had Shannon Hearn there, he had Elliot Yeo there, he had Liam Duggan and Tom Cole that is still there, but he also had Tom Barras. So that's three key pillars that are gone. So they probably need to start to establish some continuity and ensure that the young group that they're going to spend so much time developing is going to be developing and playing their best footy at the West Coast Eagles Footy Club.
Yeah, and look, the clearest example of potential homesickness is Harley Reid, who's obviously been every bit a number one pick since he went there. You just don't want to have to keep starting again.
Yeah.
So you don't want it to be a case if you put a couple of years into someone, they look really good, they decide they want to go home. Yes, you get some great draft hands, but you're hoping for the same thing again, and you're starting back at that point. So just build a stable core.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the 12 picks or whatever that Richmond had last year to do it quickly, but they'll still be in pretty good shape.
Yep. I think Willem Dersma is the player that they should be targeting.
Absolutely.
I think he suits the next generation of footy really well. He's got that run as a sort of transition midfielder, and he's a really hard worker as well. He's got that versatility, and I think there's been a little bit of unfair talk around, his surname, and has Zane lived up to the hype? Has Xavier lived up to the hype? But the younger brother, I guess you say, is always the best, and I think he's one that from West Coast really, really suits them them quite well as well. When looking at some bigger bodied mids that they perhaps already have got, he would complement them quite nicely.
Yep, and I think he's the type of guy that would have an influence straight away.
Yep.
You think about guys that might play 15 plus in their first season, and just start fast tracking, get 60 games together with a core midfield. It's a really good base.